Actually, it all comes down to power. Every country that is advanced or has the potential to develop wants to be the most powerful in the world. Regardless of the policy it implements to achieve this, the outcome is what matters. The same can be said for America and Russia. Throughout history, both countries have become enemies due to their power struggles, and they continue to be enemies to this day. To understand why Russia is so afraid of America, it's necessary to look at the background of the two countries' relations. It all started in 1776. Russia supported America's independence in 1783. Back then, everything was fine. The relationship between America and Russia completely changed when the Russians established a small trading operation in Alaska. The Russians ran a small fur trading business with the natives of Alaska. However, the business lost money in 1861, and the Russians blamed America for this loss. The Russians had threatened to provoke the Americans. In 1867, the Russians sold Alaska to the U.S. for $7.2 million, thus creating a common maritime border that still exists between the two countries today. The real tension between America and Russia began during the Soviet era. The U.S. joined the military intervention of the Allies against the Bolsheviks during the Russian Civil War from August 1918 and operated along Russia's far eastern border. After the Bolsheviks won the war and the Soviet Union was established, the U.S. strengthened its commercial and economic ties. Diplomatic relations were established between the U.S. and the USSR in 1933. However, the U.S. refused to recognize the USSR. The Cold War began between the two countries with the signing of the NATO treaty led by the U.S. in 1947, as the Soviet Union saw such a union as a threat to itself. Moreover, the U.S.'s dropping of 2 atomic bombs to end World War II had frightened the Soviet Union. After the war, the USSR accelerated its nuclear research, which paid off because the USSR invented the world's most terrifying nuclear weapon, though it never used it. The Soviet Union's efforts to send vehicles to the moon in the 1960s caused panic in the U.S. because space programs were more important than ever at that time. A fierce race began between the U.S. and the USSR, both of whom believed that power and the future were in the sky. Who would win this race? At that time, the U.S. was far behind in space programs.
Go IM-1 and the Odysseus lunar lander.
However, after conducting successful studies, the U.S. managed to launch the first spacecraft to the moon, winning the space race. This success was a great disappointment to the Soviet Union. Losing the space race meant that superiority was with the U.S., which was a great threat to the Soviet regime. However, the real threat would come from elsewhere. The social and cultural weapon of the U.S., the media, was invented. With the help of the media, the U.S. managed to reach the people of the Soviet Union, essentially conquering from within. The Rambo and Rocky film series of the 70s not only fueled the fire among the American public but also among the people of the USSR. There was already a fire of independence burning within the people living in the states within the USSR. The U.S. further fanned these flames. Due to reasons such as the poor economic policies of the USSR, its ideology entering a vicious cycle, negatively affecting many people, rising nationalist sentiments, and the USSR government losing its superiority over the hearts and minds of its people, the USSR collapsed. The collapse was just beginning. Following the dissolution of the USSR, the new state, now called Russia, was not as powerful as before. This was because many peoples within it had become separate states. Moreover, a disaster like Boris Yeltsin had come to the new Russian administration. Yeltsin was careless and cowardly by nature, and an incurable alcoholic. He didn't care about governing the state. All he did was enjoy himself and live off the taxes of the Russian people. Under Yeltsin's administration, Russia lost a lot of time. During this period, the USA grew stronger. It not only reached advanced levels in nuclear and space programs, but also established military bases in many parts of the world. One of these bases was in Turkey and the Balkan countries. To assert its dominance in the Balkan countries, the USA fragmented the Yugoslav Empire. This was a tough situation for Russia because it was being squeezed from all sides. Eventually, Russia was trapped in the Black Sea, and its dream of reaching warm seas was lost forever. Russia feared the strategies of the USA, and this fear was not unfounded. Time and again, it lost against the strategies of the USA. Economically and politically, it was in a difficult position. Yeltsin's poor management caused concern among the public and politicians.
Mr. Yeltsin resigned as president this morning, telling the Russian people that he'd done all he can.
Finally, under pressure, Yeltsin's administration had to hand over to Putin.
Thank you very much, Vladimir Putin said.
The oligarchs, who had grown powerful and exploited the people during Yeltsin's reign, were completely eliminated during Putin's time. Putin promised a bright future for Russia. As with any administration, everything was great at the beginning. That was until Putin began making critical mistakes. Putin's closeness to countries like North Korea and Iran caused the USA to become more aggressive. Following these developments, an event that led to the ongoing war today occurred. A referendum was held in Ukraine to join the European Union. The Ukrainian people accepted this referendum. However, Putin opposed this and warned Ukraine. The Ukrainian leader ignored this warning, and Russia invaded Ukraine.
We're seeing videos of Russians literally invading people's apartments.
However, this operation, carried out without any plan or strategy, led to a significant failure. The biggest reason for the failure was Russia's arrogance. The Russian army, overly confident and equipped with outdated Soviet-era weapons, invaded Ukraine but faced fierce resistance. The second major mistake made by Russia was underestimating Western states. In response to Russia's actions, Ukraine received substantial financial and military support from Western states. The weapons provided were of the latest technology and had high destructive power. Russia experienced this bitterly firsthand. Following the intense resistance of the Ukrainian army and its effective use of weapons, Russia began to suffer heavy losses. The Russia-Ukraine war, which was expected to end within a few weeks, continues to this day. One of the biggest reasons for Russia's increased fear of the USA is this war. Unable to end the war due to the strategies of the USA, Russia is in a difficult situation in terms of economic and military strength. Moreover, it lost its revenue sources because many Western states, especially the USA, imposed severe economic sanctions on Russia. These sanctions continue to affect it today. If this continues, Russia might not only lose the war, but also struggle to cope with the economic destruction it brings, eventually facing the risk of civil war. Meanwhile, the USA continues to apply its brilliant strategies. The biggest factor causing Russia's fear of the USA is the latter's possession of nuclear weapons. These weapons have the power to wipe Russia off the map in seconds. What is truly frightening is that the USA has deployed its nuclear weapons not in one location, but across countries around the globe. Imagine having many terrifying weapons, the firing of which depends on a single button. You activate nuclear weapons targeting Russia from a single center, located in various parts of the world. This is Russia's greatest fear, because Russia does not have this capability. Moreover, Russia has failed in all its strategies. It does not have deep and successful strategies like the USA. Although the Russian public seems to support Putin, they actually hope for the war to end. This also proves that Russia is vulnerable to provocations by the USA. The greatest fear of the Russian president is actually an uprising by his own people and the complete overthrow of the state. What will happen in the future is uncertain, but the current situation in Russia is not promising. As long as a power like the USA and NATO exists, it seems there's no relief for Russia. Russia cannot even use its nuclear power. It is essentially floundering in desperation. Even though it pins almost all its hopes on countries like North Korea and Iran, it realizes that these countries will not stand by its side in the event of a war. Even if North Korea, Iran, and China were to ally with Russia in a potential war, they would not be able to withstand an alliance formed by countries like the USA, European countries, and the UK. What are your thoughts on this topic? Please share your comments below. If you want more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and follow us.